Hello, everyone. Welcome to your world of mine. Show me yours, and I'll show you mine. Today we have Dylan here, and he's all the way from New England in Maine. And as you know, I'm in a very, very different location on another planet. And it's my first visit here on Earth, and I'm really curious about what Dylan is doing. So welcome, Dylan, to my world today for a moment in time.
Thank you, Hannelie.
Now, guys and girls, and everybody who's going to engage with us today, it's really for me a pleasure to be with Dylan here today. And you'll soon see why. And if you have been following our excursions here on your planet, you'll see why I'm saying this today. Because Dylan is kind of a special person, a special human being, and he brought a very specific and blessed, which we will call from my planet, a blessed gift to the world. So Dylan, just in general first, tell us about what's your world like? What is it to be feeling, what does it feel like to be alive these days on Earth?
For me?
Yeah, for you personally.
What does it feel like to be alive? That's a great question. I guess the first thing that comes to me when you ask that question, or when I sit with it, is who or what is being alive? Because that has really my sense of self, or who is doing or being the aliveness is really shifting over my lifetime. Often without knowing it, often it's, that expression hindsight is 20/20. Often it's more when I look back at it and I realize, I used to be more like that, but now I experience it very differently, and it keeps shifting over time. My sense of life, or having an experience, being alive and having an experience, is now. What am I? I'm 47 now. Mm-hmm. Is that there's not really that I am not my identity. And I didn't used to walk around saying, I am my identity. I'm my identity. No. But when I look back on it, in contrast, I see that I was identified with my identity, if you will. And what I mean by that is that I used to have the experience that I was my thoughts and I was my opinions. And I was my feelings, that was me. I am what I think. I am what I do. I am what I've done. I am what I want to do. And I'm just at the epicenter of all that doing. And I am somewhat like a sailor in an ocean who's like on the seas, but he's working the ship and he's working the sails and he's working the rudder, and I'm doing my best to manage this, and sometimes it's fun sailing and sometimes it's rough sailing. Now there's more a sense of sailing is happening, rough seas happen, calm seas happen, and I get to be there when it happens, but I'm not in control of that happening per se. I'm not making that happening happen. Thoughts happen, decision making happens. The experience of free will happens, but I don't have a sense that I have a free will, because I don't have the experience that my I-ness is deciding that. My body mind is here. Body mind is here. Stuff is happening in the world. Stuff is happening through body mind, but I don't identify as that per se.
That's
now
awesome.
if I had the result. So now I can get to your question maybe. What is it like to be alive? No.
Yeah, what does it feel like to be alive?
Yeah, I think I need to reframe the question. I don't feel like I am alive. I feel like there's an experience of life happening.
Through you.
Through this, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to be very specific. If I was just meeting somebody for coffee, I don't drink coffee, for tea, then I wouldn't be so picky about my words. I'd say, yeah, I'm doing well. Well, really, there's not an I. Practically speaking, I enjoy life very much. Thank you. The result of this shift over time, and it's been not a linear shift, of course, is that life just feels much lighter. When the more we make that shift into not identifying as the thinking process, as the deciding process, as our beliefs, it's not like we become more anti-fragile. We become more available for life just to flow through as it's wanting to flow through. And there's still pain, there's still pleasure, but happiness is no longer in the wrestling match between pleasure and pain. Happiness is now like a meta sort of like, and it's all good. and it's all, and it's all loved.
Yeah. I'm so grateful and I'm really so happy that you share it in this way when I asked you that question. Because I think it's important for us, also on my planet, to understand. And there's so much resonance with what you're saying, is that when we begin to discover that life happens through this experience, and if we don't get attached to anything, there's so much less pain as well. It's not to say we won't experience pain, but it's just so much less. It's like you say, it's lighter. It's a lighter experience. We don't get attached to all these different things. And you used words that I really enjoy using, like identification. What do we identify with? Because especially from a peer perspective, we can easily identify with others' behavior. And then we think it's us that's, for instance, not cool or not liked or not fitting in. And in essence, it's not about us in the first place. It's about the other person. It's their experience. But we identify with how they react towards us and respond to us.
Yes. We take it personally.
We take it personal, and then cause us lots of not so nice feelings sometimes, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But it's to be able to know, but this is mine and that's yours.
Yeah. Or this is what's wanting to happen over here.
Yeah.
And that's what's wanting to happen over there.
Over there. And it's two different things.
Yeah, they're different places. Like,
exactly.
Let Tokyo be Tokyo, let Johannesburg be Johannesburg. Yeah.
And let Mars be Mars. Bless Elon.
Absolutely. A thing that we might as well bring attention to if we're having this exploration of how this can be held is I am definitely not in this implying any sort of fatalism or nihilism of like whatever, it doesn't matter. There's I'm giving up the struggle of trying to make decisions, so I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch TV and say whatever. Right? Because when one is still embedded in that and one considers the option of what if I just stop wrestling with this all, that feels like the alternative. From that place, when you're inside that, then that's kind of the option. Like keep struggling or give up struggling, and that's really not the alternative that I'm that I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So just to play that through, there is a way in which, as I said before, decision making can still happen. It's not that I like to think of mountains and water and sea. So if we think of ecology, right, and we think the water cycle and the water comes up, that seems to be something that's wanting to happen, some sort of processes that want to happen in this planet of ours. Yeah. I don't know about your planet, but on this planet, maybe not so much water on Mars these days. So that water, right, it comes down onto the top of the mountain, and it's got to find its way to the sea. And so it can't just go like this. It can't just say, decision making and when to zig and when to zag, it's all too stressful, I'm just going to go straight. Like, well, that's not realistic. The water's got to zig and it's got to zag. But does it need to stress about it? Like, no. Zigging and zagging is wanting to happen because mountains, because sea, because gravity. You know?
Exactly.
But can I be the space in which zigging and zagging happens? And can I listen to, oh, feels like a zig is wanting to happen. Okay, let's go with that. Oh, feels like I have this apparatus. Feels like it's meant to be used. Like there's a purposefulness in that, right? So we can allow awareness. And this is where we started to get into my work, which is about embodiment and how to hold the body mind and work with the body mind from a place of awareness, not identifying as it, but letting this be a really awesome vehicle for life to flow through and express itself.
You're using a very interesting concept there, body mind. Maybe just to clarify for everyone, at school, in my understanding, when I visit Earth like this, it seems like humans have been trained to think the body is one thing and the mind is one thing. Is that true?
Yes and no.
Like it's separate things, like it's completely
right.
not connected.
Oh, no, definitely not. This is a very, very rich topic, and there's many ways to look at it. And some of those ways can perpetuate suffering, and some of those ways are useful in different situations, right? So it's a question of what perspective will serve you at what moment. When we're a little baby, if we take a kind of a developmental psychology perspective, when we're a little baby, we are in the moment. We're in our bodies. We have mindfulness, we have awareness, we have we're limited coordination of, and we're growing that. We're coming more into mind with body, like as the child learns to focus, as the child learns to grab, that's mind body, right? Starting to happen. It's, oh, now I can perceive object, I can track object moving, I can anticipate that the object is going there. That's all mental stuff. And then I can coordinate that with my body to grab the darn thing, right? That's mind body starting to come online. Whereas in the beginning, it's just like, it's more body, less mind. But then said child goes to school, learns to write, is often forced to learn to write too early, or to write with their non-dominant hand, is forced to go into their left brain more analytically very early, is looking at words on a page that are sort of abstractions of lived experiences. In our both developmentally and culturally, we're thrown into our mind and away from the direct concreteness of feeling and doing, which is more the realm of the body, right? So the more that we graduate into this coming online as we mature, and the more that is influenced by culture and how culture holds us, the more we get this challenge of integration between my understandings, my abstractions, my beliefs about the world versus the actual concrete fact and process of living in the world with the body, right? And then this tension gets set up between my thoughts, my desires, my judgments, my resentment, my hopes, my shame, all that activity versus just, I get the image of a cat purring. Like, is my cat self purring, or is my cat self not purring? A lot of our education, the way that children are learn and held, our increasing dominance of technology, all of this very often conspires to have a more, what I call, top-heavy operating going on, right? Where we're up here, and we sort of carry this around like a brain taxi, right, to sort of serve that. And then our mind sort of becomes a police force to the body, like, do that, feel that, no, you shouldn't feel that, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. So we're kind of shooting on ourselves all the time from top to down, if you will. And kind of like this becomes the parent, and this becomes the impetuous child. Or then we have body images. I think it's too fat, I think it's too thin, I think it's too this, I think it's too that. Or we inherit other people's views about what kind of body we should have, all of that stuff, right? So yeah.
So just sorry for interrupting you there, because
No,
I think
please.
It's important to also now ask you, having said that and shared that with us now so beautifully, what can one do when we find ourselves, we become aware of that, we're stuck in such, and I like that expression, the brain taxi thing. What can one do to come out of it? To change your perspective and your awareness just a little bit, that you can come back more into this experience, like you say, here now.
Yeah, great question. Different, all sorts of different things, depending on your situation, depending on there's different personality types, that are going to get, that they're going to, different paths are going to work for them better. And also depending on where you're at in your life, what kind of approaches. I mean, on a very, very straightforward, simple level, do you spend the whole day, where's mine? Do you spend the whole day like this? Right? Because that is really enforcing this and not enforcing this. When's the last time that you walked on the beach and barefoot with your feet in the sand? When's the last time that you let yourself have fun in the rain? Have sensual experiences.
I like that word, sensual.
Yeah, letting life and your environment be in a more direct communication with your body that doesn't need to be 95% mediated through this box up here. Yeah, this creates a kind of a closed loop, or this creates a closed loop where this can get left out of it. Now, I've done so much body-mind practice over the years that for me, working in front of a computer is a very embodied experience. But that it's not sort of built into the equation. The setup of working at a computer conspires to leave this out of the equation. So we have to rally against that to bring it back in, if you will. Until it's natural, then it's not such an effort. So first thing, are you perpetuating that imbalance by just being in a closed loop that leaves your body out of it? Are you affording yourself opportunities to stimulate this and to get that intelligence and those energy flows and those channels going? Are you comfortable with touch? Do you like to be touched? Do you have issues around that? Work on that. Get a massage. Be sensual. So that there's that obviously exercise comes into that, diet, things that help the body be healthy. Then there's the emotion, that's the physical level. Then there's the emotional level, right? To the degree that I have unprocessed emotions, be they traumatic experiences that are still sort of in there somewhere, to the degree that I have sort of, like when your nose gets clogged and you can't breathe freely, the same kind of happens with our emotions, right? Where I've got some sadness that's still there, that's kind of clogging the system. I've got anger in there that's clogging the system. Identifying that, which I don't mean like going to a Freudian psychologist and talking about it. I mean just feeling it and noticing it and going, yeah, okay, that's there. And which can be, to acknowledge that can be a big friggin' deal, because if we acknowledge that, that might mean that, maybe the situation that I've been tolerating or sort of said, okay, I'll accept this is not acceptable. Like something needs to happen, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get more painful before it gets better. But having the courage to go, yeah, I got to deal with this. I don't want this anymore. This isn't serving me, and therefore it's not serving others, that I'm not addressing this. So anyway, finding ways to let that flow through, and I say that very shortly. It's obviously a huge topic, and there's many ways that one can do that. My point right now is simply address your unprocessed emotions, because they're like this emotions are this layer, this mediation layer in between mind and body, right? So you think physical, emotional, mental, like that. They're the meat of the sandwich. And to the degree that those are stuck, two things happen: less communication between body mind, and distortion of the energy and information that wants to go between body and mind. I perceive something with my senses. The body mind, because it doesn't go brain to world, it goes body through the senses up into the brain to make sense of that. But that gets filtered through the emotional layer, right? So if I've got fear of past violence in my system, I'm looking around the world, my body's still kind of like this, conscious or not, and I'm taking in the world, and then thoughts are happening, thinking it's happening, right? Not I'm thinking is happening, but it's through that filter of, right? So what kind of thoughts am I having? I'm having more paranoid thoughts. I'm having more skeptic thoughts. I'm having more, when are they going to fuck me over again thoughts? Pardon my French. And that's just a natural function of that. It's having to pass through that layer of fear and contraction and pain, or it could be anger, or it could be anxiety, whatever it is. Yeah. So body-mind integration is emotional integration.
That's wonderful that you say that. Because if we are very sensitive beings on my planet. So we have a term called conscious sensitivity.
Say that again.
Conscious sensitivity. Which means that, and I want to now relate it to what you were just sharing about this emotional layer, which is the integration part between the mind and the body. Because it brings me to how we perceive the world and how we engage with the world. And what you're sharing now, if we're stuck in this emotional part for some or other reason, we cannot really perceive what's possible to us out there, because we get stuck in this loop, continuous loop between this emotional level and the mind. And then if the body starts resisting, then you're even worse off, because your cells respond to everything outside of yourself. They cell memory. So it's very important what you say, to consider that, to clear up this level of integration. Because it can make us think that there's only, what I experience now is the only thing that's possible. This is it. There's no other options. Because I get stuck in this loop. So I can't experience the other options. And somewhere between the mind and the body and this emotional layer, I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowing myself. So it's self-sabotage. It's not the world that's so bad. It's I'm just not able to let life flow through me, like this energy that you're speaking about.
Yes. And very much together with that is that there is no reality in the sense of this is the real. Reality is what we make of it. It's the sense making, right, in the moment that we give it. So I might have met this, well, I'm married now and have a 7-year-old, but if I'm thinking back to when I was dating, I might meet this, attractive person, and it's going great, but then we get into a conflict. Something isn't flowing. And I very quickly, the mind will create a story, won't it, about what they did wrong, or how messed up I am, wherever the mind goes, or both. And it's so easy, it's so natural for us to just assume that, well, that's, you did this and I did that, and this is the way it is, and that defines our sense of where you can go or not go from here. Well, here are our options, either, but it's all within the confines of the sense, the way that your body mind is operating in that moment.
Mm.
and to resist the urge to just assume the product of your process rather than to attend to the process that is serving up reality in that way to your awareness.
Mm.
Right? To go, okay, maybe let's not have this argument right now. Maybe let's like go do some breathing exercises and feel our body and process the energy that is in our body, and then revisit this interaction and see what's possible then. Like, oh, if you can delay that impulsive reactivity enough to attend to tweaking your process a little bit and saying, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something else is possible for how I'm allowing this process to happen through me. Oh my God, that's so transformative. You know, like I went through, you know, a number of relationships before I started to discover more of just how transformative that is. Now, when my wife and I, we're very, very different people. Personality wise, we're like opposites often attract. We have this habit now, this culture in our relationship of when we feel ourselves starting to get into any kind of a locked thing, which frankly really doesn't happen that much anymore, but it did in the first few years, especially, we would just stop and we would take 5 to 10 minutes to just breathe. And then we would actually do a little bit of movement together or certain different kinds of movements, which from this technique that I've developed, Uzazu, that we might get to, or we might not get to in this conversation, to open up different pathways for how our body mind could process the energy and information in the moment. And then we go, okay, now where are we at? Now how do we want to lean into this, you know, rest in and lean into this moment together? And we found a lot of the time that 80% of the conflict just didn't seem to be there anymore. All those things that we thought we had to argue our way through weren't even friggin' there anymore. And that's such a teaching.
That's cool. I really like that, because I'm just thinking of on a practical level. Say you're at school or at university, wherever, in the workplace, and there's a bully.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody who's just on your case all the time.
Yeah.
And I just feel that what you share now, this breathing thing and moving, can help in those kind of situations. Like just remove yourself from that experience and go somewhere where you're alone, that you can do some breathing. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's outside in nature, even better.
Yeah.
But just
possibly could be also your own private room, whatever feels safe and supportive for you. Yeah.
Wherever you feel comfortable. Yes, that you must just take that pause. That like you say, that reaction, the reactive part doesn't happen straight away. That you go into either fear or your body starts contracting, which is also not good for your health because of the fear and the anxiety. So that could be really useful. You talk about movement. So what movements are you talking about? You mentioned just this something that you developed. What is that? Is that related to to the movement?
I'm just pausing to explore in my mind before I jump into it how to get into this topic, because it's a big one. We could say that life itself is movement, right? Mm-hmm. We know something is alive because there's movement. If there's no movement anywhere, then we start to wonder, you know, if it's alive. Even I don't know, even this, what is it? Well, you could say it's dead. It's inert matter. We like to call it in science, Western modern science. Yeah. Well, it is matter, right? What is matter? Matter is molecules, certain molecular compounds. This one being brass, I think. Well, that's each compound, whether it's or substance, whether it's water or brass or plastic, is a certain way that electrons and neutrons are moving around each other, right? Oh, this one's circling around that one, and it's not circling around that one. That defines one molecule from another, right? So even down to the level of matter, it is what it is because of how it dances. and what it's choosing to dance with and what it's choosing to not dance with, attraction, repulsion. Movement happens in space, right? Movement takes up space, and movement sort of defines space, right? You have a group over here that at school, you have a group over here, these people are friends, and they're having these interactions within a certain space. And then they're creating distance or maintaining distance from this group over here who's together like this. So you get two clusters. You get a cluster here, you get a cluster here, you get a space in between. And so it is with this cluster here, space in between. This is like a little friends group over here. And this is like, you know, a little friends group over here. Movement happens in space. Space has just a few basic dimensions. It's pretty simple. You've got up, down, forward, back, out, in, right? Sagittal, we call that, vertical, lateral, right? And along these spatial axes, what can we do? We can go one way, we can go the other way, we can expand, we can contract, right? By looking at it that way, we can start to make sense of the experience and the process and the experience, so the external and the internal aspects of that movement in space. So any movement that's happening in life, what am I doing? Why am I going into this? Because movement is life. The body exists in space. The body moves in space, but we can see anything as a movement in space. We can look at our thoughts actually as a movement in space. We can look at our emotions as a movement in space. We can even look at our values as having an inherent sort of movement in space, right? If you look at the value of freedom and exploration versus the value of power and control, right? Freedom and exploration is a wider value. Like when you value that, it sends you into a wider, more fluid space, whereas power and control, right, has a different movement and maintains circles within a different framework, right? So my work over the years, and we may or may not get to the history of how I got to be interested in this and what I've been doing with this, but just to cut to the chase for right now, my work has been about circling back on what we know from the last, several hundred years of psychology and sociology and spiritual developments, and re-approaching them and re-understanding them from this point of view of movement in space, and understanding them, bringing them down to that very sort of core skeleton essence of just movement in space that seems to resonate in certain ways, that seems to create certain experiences, and not judging them as good or bad, but just saying, oh, if we're having that experience, you can work both ways. If you're having that experience, there's probably a movement like this going on. So it's sort of diagnostic. Or, oh, if you want to have that experience tends to move in this way. So why not move in that way and then see if that helps you have that experience? Like if somebody's very tight and they're like, I need to be more fluid and more easygoing, that would really serve me in my life. What I know from my research that loosening up your neck, loosening up this area here and getting your hips going and then smiling this way tends to set your body mind up in a way that makes it easier to afford yourself those kind of experiences, to get into the mode of that, to get into the groove of that. And you'll notice that if somebody is not going there that often in their life, that they tend to be a little bit of a control freak, a little bit like, let's that movement is going to feel a little bit edgy. And we're like, okay, all right, I'm not feeling it yet. And so that's a great practice for them, right? Or when they know that they're going into a situation where it's like, all right, I want to relax and I want to enjoy this, or I want to be adaptable, then they can do that as a practice to prime their body mind to be more available to having that kind of experience or engaging in that way, or mode, I call it. Or vice versa. Some people are they're like this, but it's hard for them to stand strong in their own values, or to commit to a clear sense of what do I believe is important, right? And what do I stand for, my own boundaries and my own priorities, and not just going with the flow or being, agreeable or constantly reacting and changing and not sticking and staying committed to something. So they might have the opposite challenge, right? And if I might say, okay, then go, really hold that and start to condition your body mind that it feels comfortable going there, and that feels safe to go there. And that person might be like, I'm like, no, right? Because the body mind just it doesn't have that habit energy yet. That doesn't feel safe, or could be safe, could be just a lack of practice. You haven't had the opportunity to exercise that for whatever reasons. So we circle back on body mind here, because I'm mentioning body mind again in a slightly different context than it came up before, right? So if there is this interplay between body mind, one framing that is often used in different fields, be it somatic psychology or neurobiology or cognitive neuroscience, is top down and bottom up, right? So for those that aren't familiar with that term, when we say bottom up processing, that's I have physical shape and movement. I have a sensation, I have emotion that gets fed up through my sensory motor, through my brain stem, into my limbic system, up into the neocortex, where I can process it and rationalize about it. That's a bottom-up processing. Top-down is when I think, okay, it's this time, we have this much more time left on the call, maybe we should move on to topic B. Okay, I'll rein it in so we can, all that kind of pragmatic thinking. I was talking about policing the body. That's the kind of top down, and that's very important too. So we want this balance and this flow, right, from bottom up and from top down. Why I bring that up right now in the context of this movement, and then we'll circle back to the person being bullied and how they can go move in just a moment, is because that's the thread we're on originally, is that when I do a movement, right? Say that well, let's go right from the bullying. So let's say I've been bullied. I was bullied a lot at school, quite badly. And so there's different ways that the body mind could have responded in that one. Let's say for the moment that it's a situation where when you you go away and you listen to your feelings, that there's this feeling of, I did not stand up for myself, right? I was projecting weakness. They were smelling that on me and they took advantage of it. Let's say it's that kind of thing, right? Because when there is that side of it, when people don't project enough personal power and don't mess with me, I respect myself, so you're going to respect me too. When that's not there, we're more vulnerable. I'm not saying it's always your fault that they bullied you, but there is that part of it. So we were just using this frame versus this. Those are two possible movements of many. So I could go away and then do this movement. And that could feel edgy for me. That could feel scary for me. What if I do stand up for myself? Am I going to get hit even more? Am I going to get bullied even more? Emotions come up, thoughts come up, but I know that I need to stand up for myself more. So I will put my body in a place that is sending those signals and holding that space through which power can happen. Power can consolidate. Right? I don't need to think, I'm weak, I'm a this, I'm a that, I need to be more this, I need to be more that. That's embedded, the thinker embedded in its self-identity of being a pathetic weakling and yada, 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 which just adds insult to injury and makes it more difficult. If we forget all that and say, I'm just going to friggin' do this and let that energy and power sort of coalesce so that a feeling of more empowerment comes into the body mind, thinking processes align with that, start having more empowered thoughts. I don't need to think about necessarily, if I do that, I don't need to think about I'm this, I don't need to do that whole identity cha-cha-cha.
Well, that's awesome. I don't know for anybody else, but for me, when you're showing that, I could feel you. We're very far away from each other. I could feel that power and the change, from a typical victim type posture. And like you say, it is like with horses and some animals as well. They smell you are fearful, and then they'll come for you. But when you go into what you just showed us, that's powerful. I could feel in my body wanted to entrain with your body. So my body wanted to do the same naturally. And I could just imagine from, my sensory imagination, not my intellectual imagination, could actually imagine that change. Because when I then change, the other person has something different to respond to. The bully has something very different. He doesn't know this of you. It's something new that they actually have to react to and respond to. So that's extremely powerful, Dylan. Wow.
There's been studies that have shown a researcher named Merabian, this was back, I want to say the 60s, ish, 1960s, who studied about communication, interpersonal communication, and how much of it was happening from the content of the words and the meaning of the words versus the quality of speech, the quality of body language, the quality of presence. And he found that about 88% of it was not through the content of the actual words. It was how the words were said. It was the energy. It was the expression. Context is everything. I studied acting in New York City for a while. And we learn in acting that you can say one line 50 different ways. And it'll mean 50 different things. There's exercises for that where you say, where you say yes back and forth, two actors in an exercise. And your whole text is yes and no, yes and no. And you try to tell a whole story just by each person, how they say yes and no back and forth with your body language, with your tone, right? When we're in the mind, we forget about that 88% and we think it's like finding the right thought. It's like finding the right words. And then we think, okay, I found the right thought. I found the right thing. Yeah. Okay, good. Then why do I still feel crappy? It's like, well, your body isn't supporting that. Your body isn't making that real. Right? It's just a thought.
It's not a full experience.
Yeah. So finding ways to both use your I'll go into this. That person who just got bullied and came out, they could, the fast tweak might be just, how do I want to feel? Or maybe it's the person who's about to go into a cocktail party and is feeling really scared and wants to soften up. You could drink a few more drinks. Alcohol is the go-to to loosen up. But another perhaps healthier option is to move your body like this and to massage out some of that fear and stiffness, right? And then go, all right, let's enjoy this. Let's be available to the flow. Cheaper too.
I just wanted to say that it's cheaper.
Less hangover. And but another part of embodiment is not just how you want to feel, but it's how you are feeling. It's developing the capacity to regain that deep trust that you can experience all of your emotions, that you can hold it, that they're not going to destroy you. Because our primitive mind feels threatened so easily by emotions, the unpleasant ones, and even as we get older and conditioned, some of the positive ones, right? Like depending on our history and our culture, sexuality and lust and pleasure and these things can feel like very unsafe emotions because they're tricky to manage and they have a history for many of us, right? Or power, right? the feeling of empowerment can feel unsafe, because if I were to use that, then, you know, Papa might put me in my place again, or my culture will tell me, you know, women aren't supposed to act like that, you know, cold bitch, or what, you know, whatever. Like, so all of these emotions, positive and negative, have different degrees of safeness in our conditioning. That is often, some of it, sometimes we're aware of it, we're very aware of it, but often we're unaware of it. And so we numb ourselves to it, we close ourselves off to it. And so therefore those energies, those qualities of life aren't allowed to flow through us. And we talked about that before, when that emotional layer is filtering out or blocking or distorting. It's like you have a monitor, right? I have this monitor, and we're able to communicate because our monitors are serving up a certain amount of red pixels, green pixels, and blue pixels, right? The RGB monitor. Imagine that our monitor got scared and refused to process red pixels because it just did not feel safe with those red pixels. Now, all of a sudden, our whole reality would be distorted because it wouldn't be allowing any of the red pixels through. That's kind of like what happens when one or more of our emotions gets blocked in us. We get this distorted view of our emotions. If anger isn't safe, if you don't feel safe feeling your angers, it distorts your sense of boundaries. All of a sudden, right, you're not able to listen to your body telling you that a boundary is being violated, because you're numb to that channel of information that tells you that. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, wow, Dylan, this is a rich area. I think, like you say, I think we can speak for days about this. Now, considering this rich body of wisdom, that's what I would call it. Considering that, and you have to share a message with especially the younger generations of this world, what would that message be? Considering now the context of this body-mind field and body of wisdom that's available out there, that integration part with emotion part, which is so important. You so quickly showed us that the importance of that, and then that impact on movement. I think it's important that the young ones who's going to engage in this would want to have more. So we can share later how we can share more of this with them through you in other ways. But I think just a message for the young ones in terms of a life that's not flowing, a life that's not in movement, where we feel isolated, where we feel in this current world with lots of technology still very lonely.
I don't know if I have a message. I don't, as I tune in, I don't feel a message immediately emerging, but I do have a few thoughts. As I hold my experience and awareness of the world and society and culture where it is now in 2018, as opposed to where it was in my experience of it back, 30 years ago when I was a teenager and starting to go to college and coming into the world. It's interesting that technology is such a huge force, the emergence of technology in the world and how it's transforming culture and how culture, I mean, it's coactive. Culture is creating more technology. Technology is transforming culture. And my mind is or my awareness is drawn towards a kind of a polarity or duality of forces acting upon everyone, and especially hitting or impacting people who are just coming into their adulthood, and what am I going to do in the world? How am I going to manage my own happiness or achieve my own happiness and satisfaction? And how can I do that in a way that benefits the world? the whole selfie generation. And like when I grew up, you know, to even get a picture of yourself, you had to take a picture, you had to send it into the store, you'd get it back in a week. So you'd only take 15 of them because it was expensive and it took time. Now it's like, you know, you generate 50 pictures of yourself a day. And we see ourselves where the reflection of self through the various filters, and be it our own phone, be it social media, be it our friends, there's just so much where we're confronted with ourselves, and it's so easy to become hyper self-conscious. Now, to the degree that we're in our mind and in our beliefs and conditioned thoughts about ourselves, then those are fed back into that feedback loop about ourselves. So that anxiety, that narcissism, that negative self-image just gets amplified in those loops, right? Because it's kind of like if you have a fish tank and you're taking the outlet and you're putting it back into the inlet, but there's no cleaning filter. You're just like, okay, here the fish poop and here the fish drink, and it's all just going like this. And that sort of closed loop technology, when you've got negative self-thoughts in there, is doing that. You're just, you know, you take a picture, you don't like yourself, you make a fake smile, hi, and then you look at that and you just keep feeding that back at yourself. It's not helpful. And yet the potential of it at the same time, so there's a challenge, but there's an opportunity for self-awareness is greater than ever, right? Those are opportunities for self-awareness. Right now, instead of just having a conversation with you sitting in front of me, I'm having a conversation looking at my own picture and looking at yours. Now, I could choose to buy into any thoughts of, oh, I've got little bags under my eyes, oh, my hair is a little spiky, oh, my nose is still a little bit too big. You know, I could go with those thoughts that arise, they still arise. But I've reconditioned myself to be so uninterested in those thoughts as they emerge. What I'm interested in is the opportunity that I can see myself, and I can see how, like, look at that smile right there. There's just a little bit of resentment in that smile. I know that smile, and I know that there's a little bit of disgust emotion in there. Oh, where's that disgust in me? Oh, I can let that go, right? I can use that as self-awareness, but I have to hold it in a more transpersonal space where I'm not embedded in it and then creating more self-loathing or whatever, or ego. Like, oh, I'm looking good today.
Aren't you?
So can you use technology, in other words, and that all those feedback loops in a way that is self-transformational, self-awareness, instead of just more narcissism for better, you know, for positive and negative, right? So that's one side of it. The other side of it is the world, right? We are more aware of what's happening in the world than ever before. When I grew up, if you didn't like go to the stand and watch the newspaper, put yourself down in front of a TV, you didn't know what was happening. Now I get alerts from 2 different news services every time, you know, Trump sneezes the wrong way. Well, no, I don't like the way I said that. Trump does a lot of stuff that I personally find concerning. But I have to, like, you almost have to take action to not be informed about it all the time, right? And how much can we process? You know, there's a point at which, well, is that actionable information? What am I going to do with that information? That another hurricane happened here, that X amount of people are starving there. Like, whoa, we have a 7-year-old, and we really had to make conscious choices about how much world events to expose her to when. Because at a certain point, it's just overwhelming. My 7-year-old shouldn't be thinking about global warming. She does not know the concept yet. And we do not want her to know that concept yet. So it's very important to be conscious. You do not have a moral obligation to know about what's happening in the world. You do not. And I think young people need to know that. It's not your responsibility. It's our responsibility. At the end of the day, life, just like I said at the beginning, you are not the doer. Life is happening. Life will happen as life happens. This will go where it goes. And can we hold that space of trust, hold that space of surrender, trust that life flows as life goes, and to listen, comes back to the body mind, to listen to where do I feel called to direct my energy and effort right now, and trust that wherever I feel called to do that is right. And you do not, and if that does not direct you to keep up to date on the latest volcano in Hawaii, or the latest terrible thing that Trump said, great, more power to you. Really monitor what you're taking in, and don't take in what doesn't feel useful to you. Just don't.
That's a beautiful way of sharing, and a very powerful way of sharing it. Because I think today it's very, for the younger generations in particular, it's very difficult to make decisions because there's just so much going on. So many options. 30 years ago, there weren't all those options available. But because of technology and communication and the internet, everything's blown open. So Dylan, thank you so much. Everybody, this is a rich topic that Dylan has slowly started to unfold for us. And Dylan, I don't know, with your permission, we will leave your details at the end of this podcast.
Sure.
If anybody want to contact you afterwards to have personal engagements with you, or group engagements, or anything that wonderful that you share with the world, that they can have access to that, we will be grateful. But again, if you resonate with that we can share it. Because you even mentioned in the beginning, you can speak for hours and days about this and share different wisdoms and practices that really works. It's not just talk, it's embodied. You're using the word embodied. That's a different topic by itself, which we can talk about days for. So thank you very much, Dylan, for being with us today. And I can just sense now, through my conscious sensitivity, that a whole new world will open up for everyone who's watching this and engaging in this, if they just explore a little bit of what you shared today. Just a little bit will open up so much more. And on my planet, my people are very, very happy that we have this connection and that we can share this, and we want to know more. And we will create more situations where we can actually go a little bit more deeper and wider into this. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. And I feel like now I can very briefly answer your question of my message. Mm-hmm. My message would be, listen to your feelings in your body, not in your mind, but in your body. Use your mind and your awareness to listen to your body. Listen to those feelings and notice how they make you want to move. And that's general, but it's also very specific. So if you're dealing with a certain challenge, focus in on it and then listen to your body. How does my body want to move with this? And that can mean, of course, many different things in the moment, but that's the essence of it. Trust the way that life wants to move through you in the moment, and allow everything else to unfold from there.
Wow.
So thank you so much for this opportunity to engage and to meet everybody who's watching this. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Dylan. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon again. Have a wonderful